Have you ever noticed how your imagination never stops talking to you? It shows you flashes of a life that feels truer than the one you're living, a home that feels familiar, a moment of peace that feels remembered rather than invented. Most people dismiss those images as fantasy, but what if they're not? What if that quiet voice inside you isn't imagination pretending, but God communicating? Neville Goddard spent his life teaching one radical truth. The creator you've been searching for isn't outside. He's within you, speaking through your imagination. Every scene that moves you, every vision that feels realer than real, is divine guidance disguised as thought. That's why Neville said, "Imagination is God in action." The voice you keep ignoring is the one shaping your destiny. And here's the paradox most people miss. You're not waiting for your desires to be created. Creation is finished. The only thing left is for you to feel it, to assume it, to live as though it's already true. Because imagination doesn't predict reality, it produces it. So as you listen, don't treat these ideas as philosophy. Treat them as sacred instructions, a conversation between you and the God within. Once you truly understand that your imagination is God speaking to you now, your entire world will begin to answer back in the same language, manifestation. There's a voice inside you that doesn't speak in words, but in visions, sensations, and sudden knowing. It's subtle. So subtle that most people mistake it for daydreaming. Yet this quiet whisper is the most sacred part of you. Neville Goddard called it the voice of God within. It's not fantasy. It's the pulse of divine imagination gently showing you what's possible. Think about those moments when an idea appeared out of nowhere, one that lit you up inside. Maybe it was a business idea, a picture of your future home, or a glimpse of a healed relationship. That wasn't random. That was the divine imagination Neville Goddard spoke of, gently nudging you to feel it real. It's God, dressed as intuition, speaking in images instead of commandments. Many people wait for signs written in clouds or booming voices from heaven, but God rarely shouts, He paints. He paints through your imagination, using emotion as the brush. Every dream you've ever dared to see wasn't you wishing. It was God within Neville, the same presence, quietly showing you what creation has already finished. When Neville said, "Imagination is God," he didn't mean that imagination resembles God. He meant it is God in expression, the creative force animating everything. When you close your eyes and see yourself joyful, abundant, or loved, you are literally communing with the Creator. You're participating in the same power that said, "Let there be light." Most people underestimate the holiness of a mental picture. They call it just imagination. But that's like calling a seed just dirt. Inside that image is the blueprint of your future reality. As Neville often explained, creation is finished. Everything you can imagine already exists in potential form, waiting for you to recognize and embody it. Children know this truth instinctively. Watch a child play. They live in their imagination so fully that the world bends to it. Then adulthood trains us to be realistic. Yet what is realism but faith in limitation? To live in the end, as Neville Goddard taught, is to return to that childlike knowing that imagination creates reality, and reality is flexible. Close your eyes for a moment and think of something you deeply desire. Notice how it already feels alive within you, that warmth, that inner smile. That's the divine signal. You're not begging for something to come, you're remembering something that already is. Feeling is the secret doorway between what's unseen and what becomes seen. So when that inner voice shows you a picture of peace, abundance, or healing, don't dismiss it. Don't call it fantasy. That's divine communication. God talking in your native tongue, images and emotions. And if you listen long enough, you'll start to feel that every true desire is not asking you to chase, but to recognize. In silence, when thoughts fade and imagination begins to speak, something holy happens. It's like tuning a radio from static to symphony. The more you honor that stillness, the clearer the transmission becomes. God within doesn't demand, He invites. And the invitation is always the same. See it, feel it, and trust it as real. This is where everything begins. Not in effort, not in struggle, but in listening. The imagination that whispers to you is the same force that created galaxies. Once you realize that, you stop doubting its power. You start to sense that perhaps this voice, this divine imagination, has been guiding you all along. Neville Goddard didn't just preach philosophy. he revealed a radical truth. You and God are not separate beings. When he said God and man are one, he meant that the divine isn't watching from above, it's dreaming through you. Your human imagination is the instrument through which God experiences creation. Every thought, image, and feeling is divine communication in motion. Think of your imagination as a language, not of words, but of pictures and emotion. When you imagine something vividly, you are speaking directly to the infinite. Each inner vision is like a sentence in that sacred language. Imagination is God, Neville said, and once you grasp that, you stop asking if God hears you and start realizing he's speaking through you. We've been taught to pray by asking, pleading, or negotiating. But what if prayer was simply holding an image until it becomes alive within you? When Neville explained feeling it real, he was describing the true form of prayer, not a request, but a recognition. Each image you hold with feeling is a decree from the divine imagination, already acknowledged in the unseen. Think of how you imagine a loved one calling you, and moments later the phone rings, or how you picture finding a solution and suddenly the right book appears. Coincidence or creation? That's the law of assumption manifestation quietly at work, showing that imagination creates reality, not the other way around. It's God echoing your inner state. When you dwell on fear, you plant fear's image in the soil of consciousness. When you dwell on faith, you plant the image of fulfillment. The ground doesn't judge the seed, it simply reproduces it. Your mind works the same way. The divine imagination within you takes your assumptions as commands, not suggestions. That's how creation is finished, gets explained in real life. There's immense responsibility in that, because if imagination is the voice of God, then your inner dialogue is sacred ground. Every mental picture is a prayer, whether conscious or unconscious. So the question becomes, what conversation are you having with God right now? Are you speaking in the language of fear or in the language of faith? Neville used to say, man moves in a world that is nothing more or less than his consciousness objectified. That means your world is a mirror, faithfully reflecting your inner assumptions. When you see this, blame disappears and power returns. You no longer see life as happening to you, but as happening through you. That's when creation becomes cooperation. Try this. The next time something bothers you, don't fight it externally. Instead, retreat inward, close your eyes, and imagine the ideal outcome as already true. Feel its reality. That inner adjustment, though invisible, is the real work. The outer world merely rearranges to match it. You've just practiced divine communication in its purest form. The moment you start living this way, life transforms. People respond differently. Opportunities seem to find you. It's not magic, it's alignment. The God within Neville Goddard described is not distant. It's intimate, responsive, alive in your imagination right now. And when you realize that, every image you hold becomes an act of creation. So when you catch yourself imagining failure or lack, pause. You are not just thinking, you are speaking creation into being. Choose instead to see yourself as fulfilled, abundant, and guided. That is how you honor the divine imagination. And soon you'll begin to sense a deeper truth, that nothing outside you ever had the power to decide your fate. One of humanity's biggest misunderstandings is this. We treat imagination as child's play, as if it's detached from reality. But every bridge, song, invention, or love story started as someone's private vision. The world you touch today was once invisible, imagined by someone who dared to trust the unseen. That's what Neville Goddard meant when he said imagination creates reality. Look around your room right now. The chair, the phone, the building, all were born in the invisible workshop of imagination. Someone pictured it first. Creation begins inward, always. When people dismiss imagination as make-believe, they're really denying their creative power. The law of assumption teaches that what you assume as real within must eventually take form without. Neville often shared the story of visualizing himself traveling without money, only to find the means appearing in miraculous ways. He wasn't pretending, he was feeling it real. That's the difference. Fantasy is when you escape reality. Imagination, as Neville taught, creates reality. It's divine intelligence rehearsing what's already finished, waiting for you to assume it. Have you noticed how daydreaming about problems brings more problems? That's not coincidence. It's the same law working unconsciously. The imagination doesn't discriminate. It reflects belief, whether positive or negative. That's why Neville insisted on living in the end. assuming the fulfilled state until it feels natural. It's not wishful thinking, it's conscious creation. Consider this. When an architect imagines a building, no one calls it delusion. When an entrepreneur imagines success, it's called vision. But when an ordinary person imagines a better life, society labels it unrealistic. Yet the same principle applies. Creation is finished explained means everything already exists in imagination, waiting for recognition. Your higher self, that deeper awareness within, constantly whispers new possibilities. But the outer world shouts louder. Doubt, logic, and fear often drown out that still small voice. To hear it, you must become quiet enough to trust what you feel. Remember, feeling is the secret. The emotion behind your imagination determines whether it fades or forms. Think of a sculptor staring at marble. The statue already exists in his mind. Each strike of the chisel only reveals what he's already seen. That's how divine imagination works. You're not creating from nothing. You're revealing what God within you has already conceived. The unseen blueprint becomes visible through faith and feeling. It's easy to dismiss imagination because it seems not real, but reality itself is fluid. Quantum physics now echoes Neville's teachings. Observation shapes manifestation. When you feel it real, you collapse potential into form. The outer world bends to the conviction of your inner world. That's not fantasy, that's participation in divine law. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "It's just my imagination," pause. Those words are powerful. You're speaking about the creative center of the universe, the mind of God moving through you. Treat imagination with reverence. It's the sacred canvas where new worlds are painted, where unseen possibilities wait for your belief to bring them forth. Imagination is not an escape from life, it's the engine of it. Every miracle, breakthrough, or blessing begins as a whisper from your higher self, subtle, gentle, often ignored. But once you recognize it as divine communication, everything changes, because now you realize what you imagine today is what the world will one day call reality. Most people think prayer is reciting words, but true prayer is listening. When you ignore imagination, you're not just missing ideas, you're muting the divine whisper that creates worlds. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is the voice of God within you. To turn away from it is like hanging up the phone mid-conversation with your Creator. When you pray but still feel empty, it's not that God isn't answering, it's that you're not listening. God doesn't speak through thunder or lightning. He speaks through subtle inner visions, sensations, and peace. When you catch a glimpse of your desired state, that's divine imagination inviting you to feel it real. That feeling is the language of faith. We often think faith means waiting patiently for proof. But Neville flipped that idea. Faith, he said, is the ability to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled before it shows up. That means when you imagine being healed, loved, or prosperous, and feel gratitude now, you're not pretending. You're aligning with the finished creation. That's true prayer in motion. Ignoring imagination doesn't silence it entirely. It only drives it underground. It continues creating, but unconsciously, from fear or doubt. That's why so many people say, "I knew this would happen," when things go wrong. They didn't realize their inner dialogue was a constant prayer, answered faithfully by the law of assumption manifestation. Try this small shift. Before you pray for something, imagine from it. Don't speak as someone lacking, speak as someone fulfilled. Feel the end as real. That's what Neville meant by living in the end. The universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to vibration, the emotional certainty that what you desire already is. Faith isn't blind, it's visionary. It sees what others can't and feels what the world denies. When you feel it real, you're not fooling yourself. You're tuning yourself to the frequency of fulfillment. That's how you turn imagination into evidence. The moment you feel the truth within, the outer world begins rearranging itself to agree. Think about it. How many times have you ignored a nudge, that gut feeling, that quiet idea, only to regret it later? That was imagination trying to guide you. Every intuitive pull, every inspired thought is a divine breadcrumb leading you to your next creation. Following it is faith. Resisting it is fear disguised as logic. Prayer, as Neville explained, is communion, not conversation. It's not you talking to a distant deity. It's God imagining through you. When you feel the state of your desire and rest in that assurance, you're in perfect union with the divine imagination Neville Goddard described. That's the highest act of worship, becoming one with your vision. There's a certain peace that comes when you stop begging and start believing. You realize you've never been ignored. You've only been invited to look inward. That's where faith lives. That's where creation begins. Every image, every feeling, every whisper of joy within you is God saying, "This is already yours." So if you've ever wondered why your prayers seem unanswered, maybe it's not about asking louder. It's about listening deeper, because the divine doesn't shout, it imagines. And the moment you dare to listen with feeling, you'll discover what Neville always knew. Prayer isn't asking for a miracle, it's embodying one. Neville Goddard called the moments before sleep the sacred doorway. In that drowsy state between waking and dreaming, your conscious mind relaxes, and the subconscious becomes receptive. That's when imagination speaks loudest. He taught that when you fall asleep, feeling it real, you're planting divine instructions into the creative mind of God within. Imagine this. As you lie in bed, your mind begins to drift. Instead of replaying worries or regrets, you gently picture your desire as already complete. Maybe it's waking up in a new home, holding the person you love, or feeling financial freedom. See it, feel it. Let gratitude fill your chest. That emotion tells the divine imagination Neville Goddard described, "It is done." This practice isn't about forcing a vision, it's about surrender. You don't have to control the how or the timing. Creation is finished. You're simply aligning with what already exists in the invisible. When Neville explained this, he wasn't being poetic. He meant literally that every possibility lives within imagination, waiting for your assumption to activate it. Before sleep, the mind is like soft clay. Whatever impression you leave upon it will harden overnight. Most people press worry and fear into it, then wonder why they wake up anxious. But you can choose differently. The law of assumption manifestation works best when your heart is calm, your breathing steady, and your imagination alive with fulfillment. Start small if you'd like. Picture something simple, maybe receiving a text or hearing someone congratulate you. Replay that inner scene a few times until it feels natural. Don't analyze, just enjoy the feeling. When your inner world feels realer than the outer, that's when the seed has been planted. Feeling is the secret water that nourishes it. You don't have to visualize perfectly. Emotion matters more than detail. Neville often said, "It's not what you see, but how you feel about what you see." Let the scene unfold naturally. Feel the relief, the joy, the peace of already having what you desire. That inner calm is the sign you've touched the divine, that God within Neville was pointing to. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back. Imagine it like tuning a radio from static to signal. Every time you return to the end scene, you strengthen the connection. The subconscious doesn't argue or reason. It accepts whatever you impress upon it, and what it accepts, it expresses. That's why this nightly ritual is so powerful. Some people report waking up the next morning with fresh ideas, new opportunities, or unexpected messages aligned with what they imagined. That's not luck, it's divine coordination. The world outside simply reflects what's been accepted within. It's proof that imagination creates reality, and that your inner world is the blueprint of your outer one. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. No rituals, no long meditations, just faith expressed through feeling. Before sleep, slip into that fulfilled state. Whisper, "Thank you." Then rest, knowing the creative power of God is working through you. This is how the divine imagination moves from invisible thought to tangible fact. So tonight, when you close your eyes, don't drift into sleep carrying the past. Drift carrying the vision of the future already done. Let the feeling of the wish fulfilled cradle you to rest. Because in that quiet moment, you're not just dreaming and you're communing. God is showing you what's already true and waiting for you to believe it. Neville Goddard often said, "Feeling is the secret," and he meant it literally. Imagination by itself is potential, but feeling is what brings it to life. You can visualize all you want, but without emotion, the image stays flat. Feeling is the divine breath that animates the word. It's what transforms imagination into experience, potential into form. Think of imagination as the script, and feeling as the performance. You can read words on a page, but it's emotion that makes them real. When you feel it real, as Neville taught, you impress the subconscious mind with conviction. That conviction is faith in action, the certainty that what you've imagined already is, long before it appears. Gratitude is one of the most powerful bridges between the invisible and visible. When you give thanks for something not yet seen, you're declaring that it's already yours. It's not pretending, it's perceiving from the higher state. That vibration of gratitude tells the divine imagination, I trust the process. And the universe always mirrors that trust. Joy has its own creative frequency. When you imagine from joy, everything aligns faster, because joy is evidence of alignment itself. It's God's confirmation saying, you're tuned in. Notice how things seem to flow when you're happy for no reason. That's law of assumption manifestation in real time. Your inner vibration magnetizing matching conditions. Peace is the quiet seal that completes the work. Neville said that after imagining you must rest, not in exhaustion but in assurance. When you feel peace, you've reached the end. You're no longer grasping or doubting. That calm knowing is the energy of, it is done. That's when creation moves effortlessly from unseen to seen. Most people rush from desire to worry. They imagine briefly, then spend hours doubting. But faith is consistency in feeling. You don't have to sustain excitement all day. Just maintain a gentle inner knowing. Like a thermostat once set, the room adjusts automatically. Feeling is that internal setting. It determines the temperature of your reality. You can practice this easily. Throughout the day, pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? If it's anxiety, don't fight it. Transform it. Close your eyes, breathe, and imagine the end fulfilled. Feel the relief. That shift, subtle as it seems, is divine alchemy. You've just changed frequencies, from lack to creation, from fear to faith. Neville used to describe this process as dying to the old man. When you persist in a new feeling, the old emotional patterns lose power. You stop reacting to appearances and start responding from vision. That's when miracles become normal, because your emotional state finally matches the reality you desire. Feeling is the evidence of faith. Imagine emotion as the ink of your creative pen. Each feeling writes a new line in your story. The more you practice gratitude, joy, and peace, the more your script becomes one of abundance and ease. That's why Neville insisted, emotion is prayer. You don't have to beg, you just have to feel in harmony with what's already finished. So tonight, when you imagine your fulfilled desire, don't just see it, feel it. Let gratitude rise, let joy glow in your chest, let peace settle over you like a blanket. That's the vibration that seals imagination into form. And soon you'll realize it was never about what you saw. It was always about what you felt. Neville Goddard used to say, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world rearrange itself. That's easier said than done, especially when everything in the 3D world screams the opposite. But here's the truth. Appearances lie. They're not final facts, they're echoes of past states. God doesn't speak through them. He speaks through the language of assumption. When you assume something as true, you're giving life to a new reality. The world may take time to catch up, but that's all it is, and time. Your outer world is just your inner world slowed down to visible speed. The divine imagination Neville Goddard spoke of doesn't argue with circumstances. It simply creates beyond them. That's real faith. Think of it like a movie on pause. What you see on the screen doesn't reveal the next scene. It only shows where the story stopped. If you want to change the frame, you must change the reel. In the same way, to change life, you must change your assumption. What you persist in feeling real eventually overrules what you see now. When things go wrong, the natural impulse is to react, to doubt, to complain, to panic. But reaction keeps you chained to the old state. The law of assumption manifestation invites you to do the opposite. Remain unmoved. Feel from the new state, even when the evidence denies it. That's not denial of reality. That's declaration of truth. Neville often said, the world is a mirror forever reflecting what you are doing within. If the mirror shows a frown, you don't argue with the glass. You adjust your face. Likewise, when life reflects lack or delay, you adjust your inner assumption. Feel abundance. Feel love. The reflection must follow. That's the spiritual physics of creation. Faith isn't tested when things look easy. It's tested when the facts contradict you. Anyone can believe when the evidence agrees. But to stand in peace while appearances scream otherwise, that's mastery. That's when you prove to yourself that imagination is God, not opinion, not luck, but law. The outer world bows to inner conviction. You can test this today. If you've been waiting for something, an answer, a breakthrough, instead of saying, it's not here, try whispering, it's done. Feel that. Notice how your body relaxes, how your breath deepens. That feeling is your signal to the divine. You've switched languages, from human frustration to divine assumption. God doesn't respond to desperation. He responds to identification. When you live in the end, you're not asking for change, you're being it. That's why Neville's teachings are so radical. They place all power in your consciousness. The 3D world may resist for a moment, but persistence melts resistance. It has no choice but to conform. Remember, every current fact was once an assumption too. The clothes you wear, the home you live in, the love you have, all began as unseen states. So when the outer world argues, smile. It's only echoing your old beliefs. Keep walking in the new state, and soon the echo will fade. The new melody will take over. The language of assumption is subtle but powerful. It doesn't plead, it declares. It doesn't look for signs, it creates them. And when you master it, you realize appearances are temporary, but imagination is eternal. So the next time the 3D world contradicts you, remember, it's not God denying you, it's God asking, do you still believe? Once you start honoring your imagination as divine communication, something incredible happens. Life begins to speak back. Neville Goddard called this the bridge of incidents. It's when the outer world starts arranging itself to match your inner state. You'll notice stronger intuition, subtle nudges, even coincidences too perfect to ignore. Those are signs you're hearing God clearly. Intuition is the divine GPS. It never shouts, but it's always right. You might feel a gentle pull to call someone, take a different route, or open a specific book. When you follow that feeling, things line up effortlessly. That's not luck, that's alignment. It's the law of assumption manifestation guiding you through inspired movement rather than forced effort. Sometimes the signs come as imaginal flashes, sudden mental pictures that appear out of nowhere. Maybe you see yourself laughing in a new place, meeting a person, or holding something symbolic. Don't dismiss those images. That's your higher self showing you what's already true. They're previews of realities that exist, because creation is finished. Synchronicities are the universe's way of saying, you're in tune. You think of someone, and they text you. You imagine an opportunity, and the email appears. These patterns confirm that imagination creates reality, and that your inner world and outer world are dancing to the same rhythm. It's God within Neville, smiling through your day. But be careful. Signs are confirmations, not conditions. You don't need them to believe. They appear because you believe. If you start chasing signs, you slip back into doubt. The most powerful manifestations often happen when you stop looking and simply live in the end. The signs then flood in naturally, like echoes of your inner faith. Pay attention also to how your body responds. When imagination speaks, the body relaxes. There's peace, warmth, or quiet excitement, never anxiety. That emotional signature tells you whether it's your ego or your divine imagination speaking. God's voice always carries calm assurance, never fear. Feeling is still the secret, even in discernment. Neville said the subconscious is the womb of creation. Once a seed is planted, the signs are like little kicks, proof that life is growing within. Don't dig up the seed to check its progress. Nurture it with gratitude. The intuitive impulses, the coincidences, the sudden ideas, they're evidence that the process is unfolding perfectly. Sometimes hearing clearly means losing certain things or people. Don't resist it. The divine imagination clears paths, not out of punishment but preparation. What feels like loss is often space being made for your assumption to take form. Trust the rearrangement. The bridge of incidents may surprise you, but it always leads to fulfillment. Keep a small journal of your synchronicities. Write down each time imagination and reality meet. Over time, you'll notice a pattern, proof that you are indeed hearing God's whispers. This practice builds faith. Soon you won't just believe that imagination is God. You'll know it through experience, through living evidence. And when those signs appear, that unexpected message, that coincidental encounter, pause and smile. That's the universe nodding back, saying, yes, you heard correctly. The stronger your trust, the clearer the signals, because the divine imagination doesn't speak in words, it speaks in alignment. And when you're aligned, even silence feels like confirmation. There comes a moment on this journey when something shifts. You stop reaching outward for answers and start looking inward for awareness. That's what Neville Goddard meant by embodiment. You no longer see God as a being up there, but as consciousness flowing through you. Every time you imagine with feeling, you realize God is imagining through your mind. Religion often teaches separation, man here, God there, but Neville shattered that illusion. He said, you are God, imagining yourself as who you are. This doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you responsible. You understand that imagination is God Neville Goddard spoke of, the creative power in human form. You are both the vessel and the voice. When you live from this awareness, prayer changes entirely. It's no longer asking but acknowledging. You don't say, "Please God, give me this." You say, "Thank you, Father, it's already done," because you understand that creation is finished. The divine imagination has already completed every possibility. You simply align through assumption. Embodiment is quiet confidence. You stop chasing signs, stop seeking validation, and start radiating certainty. People will feel something different about you, a peace that can't be faked. That's the vibration of someone who feels it real, who lives in the end, who knows the law of assumption manifestation isn't theory, but truth in motion. Neville once said, "Stop thinking of God and start thinking from God." That's the essence of embodiment. To think from God is to operate from the state of fulfillment. You no longer picture a desire, you become the person who already has it. That's why results come faster, because there's no gap left between desire and identity. This awareness brings humility, not ego. You realize everything good you manifest isn't by personal effort, but by divine flow. The same intelligence that spins galaxies now breathes ideas into your imagination. You're not controlling reality, you're cooperating with it. That's what Neville meant when he said, "God becomes man, that man may become God." To embody this truth daily, start each morning by remembering, "I and my Father are one." Speak it, feel it, breathe it. Then go about your day, assuming the attitude of fulfillment. When challenges arise, respond as the divine would, with calm authority. This inner steadiness is the evidence of embodiment. The world bends to it. Notice how your relationships shift too. You stop needing others to fill your cup. Instead, you overflow naturally, because love now flows from within. People are drawn to that energy. You become a living demonstration of what Neville called divine imagination, expressing itself through human form. And that presence transforms everything around you. At this level, prayer feels more like remembering than requesting. You enter silence, feel gratitude, and simply know. Sometimes words aren't needed at all, only awareness. And in that awareness, miracles feel ordinary. The line between the spiritual and the physical blurs because you realize they've always been one and the same. Deep embodiment is the merging of heaven and earth within you. You stop trying to reach God and start realizing you've never been separate. Every inspired thought, every peaceful moment, every fulfilled vision is proof. God imagines through you, breathes through you, creates through you. And once you live from that truth, everything else becomes effortless. Right now, as you read these words, your imagination is alive, not as a tool, but as the very presence of God moving through you. Every image, every intuitive nudge, every inner whisper is divine guidance in real time. Neville Goddard called this God in action. You don't have to wait for miracles. You're living inside one. The voice of God is the picture you see within. When you truly grasp this, trust becomes your default state. You no longer beg for signs. You live as the sign. The outer world stops being a test and becomes a mirror, faithfully reflecting your assumptions. The moment you feel something real within, creation begins responding. Because imagination is not future tense. It's now. It's God speaking now, creating now. You might notice that the more you trust your imagination, the faster synchronicities happen. That's not coincidence, it's communication. The divine imagination Neville Goddard described doesn't delay, it aligns. As you persist in faith, the world starts to rearrange like a stage set between scenes. Every movement, every encounter, every detail begins echoing your new state. Trusting the vision often means walking by inner light when the outer path is dark. The 3D world may not yet show what you feel inside, but that's where real faith lives. You choose to believe in the unseen voice, to rest in the end as though it's already done, and eventually, what you once imagined stands before you as fact. That's how imagination creates reality. The challenge is that doubt speaks louder than faith at first. The mind wants evidence, timelines, guarantees, but God doesn't work through proof, He works through assumption. Every time you say, "I'll believe it when I see it," you delay it. But when you whisper, "I'll see it because I believe it," you align instantly with divine creation. Neville's entire message can be summarized in one simple truth. Feeling it real is faith. When you feel the truth of your vision, not think but feel, you unite with it in consciousness. That union is creation. You don't need to convince the universe, You only need to convince yourself. The outer world will follow like a faithful echo. So whenever doubt arises, return to stillness. Close your eyes. Breathe into the feeling of it already done. You'll sense the calm authority of God within, the same creative power Neville Goddard lived by. Trust that feeling more than you trust appearances. The unseen is truer than the seen. The imaginal is the source of the physical. There's incredible freedom in realizing you were never waiting on God. God was waiting on you. Waiting for you to believe, to feel, to assume. Every vision that stirs your soul is divine permission. You're not making it up. You're remembering what's already true in imagination. Trust it, because every fulfilled dream begins with a believer who dared to feel it real. Life becomes a divine dialogue. You imagine, reality responds. You assume, the world echoes. You feel, creation unfolds. This conversation never ends. It's eternal, like God Himself. The more you listen, the more fluent you become in the language of assumption. And soon everything around you begins to harmonize with the song of your inner state. So trust the vision, even when no one else sees it. Feel it real, live in the end, and let peace be your proof. Your imagination is not a wish, it's the voice of God whispering destiny. The more you trust it, the clearer it speaks. Because in the end, there is no separation. There's only God, imagining as you, speaking through you, and creating right now. If there's one truth Neville Goddard wanted you to remember, it's this: you are never separated from creation. The same divine imagination that formed the stars is shaping your life this very second, through every thought, every assumption, every feeling you dare to claim as real. So the next time your mind shows you a vision that feels too good to be true, pause before dismissing it. Ask yourself, what if this is God showing me what's already mine? What if that dream isn't wishful thinking but divine memory, an echo from a reality that already exists, waiting for me to believe it into form? Your task isn't to beg for change, but to become the change, to live in the end, to feel it real, to trust that imagination creates reality, because it always does. And as you go, remember, every assumption you hold is a prayer, every feeling you sustain is a creation in progress, and every moment of gratitude is proof that God is speaking through you. If this message resonated with you, if something inside you whispered, yes, this is truth, then don't let it fade. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and keep walking this path of awareness with us. Because every new video is another reminder that God is not somewhere far away. He's right here, imagining through you, speaking now.